Lecture 10, Confucius and Confucianism. The Taoist-Buddhist synthesis competed with another synthesis that was dominant during China's Han Dynasty, 206 to 220 AD. This synthesis is called Han Confucianism. In contrast with Taoist and Buddhist thought, the political philosophical synthesis of Han Confucianism valued family, scholarship, conformity to a moral code, actively fulfilling social duty, and submission to order established by the social hierarchy. These Han Confucian values are in tension with the Taoist Buddhist emphasis on feminine attributes, governmental non-intervention, the personal, the spontaneous, emptiness, and inaction. In studying Confucianism, we will begin with Confucius before turning our attention to key elements of his philosophy. Confucius. The Chinese philosopher Confucius lived from 551 to 479 BC, was born into the period of the time that Karl Jaspers names the Axial Age. According to Jaspers, the Axial Age began in the 700s BC and lasted into the 200s BC. The Hebrew prophets, Siddhartha Buddha, Confucius, founders of Hindu Vedic schools, Zarathustra, Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato all lived during this pivotal age. According to Jaspers in The Origin and Goal of History, and I quote, "It would seem that this axis of history is to be found in the period around 500 BC, in the spiritual process that occurred between 800 and 200 BC. It is there that we meet with the most deep-cut dividing line in history. Man, as we know him today, came into being. For short, we may style this the axial period. The most extraordinary events are consecrated in this period. Confucius and Lao Tzu were living in China. All the schools of Chinese philosophy came into being, including Moti, Chuang-Tzu, Li Tzu, and a host of others. India produced Upanishads and Buddha and, like China, ran the whole gamut of philosophical possibilities down to skepticism, to materialism, sophism, and nihilism. In Iran, Zarathustra taught a challenging view of the world as struggle between good and evil. In Palestine, prophets made their appearance, from Elijah by way of Isaiah and Jeremiah to Deutero-Isaiah. Greece witnessed the appearance of Homer, of the philosophers Parmenides, Heraclitus, and Plato, of the tragedians, Thucydides, and Archimedes. Everything implied in these names developed during these few centuries almost simultaneously in China, India, and the West, without anyone of these regions knowing the others." End of quote. Is Jasper's axial age compatible with the Christian teaching from Galatians chapter 4, verse 4, that Christ was sent in the fullness of time? I think it is possible, as long as we see the axial age and its many profound thinkers preparing history with their pivotal thought for the Christian fullness of time. Confucius added to the collective wisdom of the axial age with his methodical approach to obtaining order in society. For Confucius, family, scholarship, and civic duty are to be at the service of well-functioning state, in which every person conforms to his role. The principal source of Confucius's teachings are the Analects. The Analects are a compilation of Confucian teaching by his students, since Confucius did not write down what he taught. Below this would be in the transcript below, but I'm going to read a few key excerpts from the prominent Confucian values. Aspects of Confucian thought we will focus our attention are the following: family, scholarship, conformity, and active civic duty. We will begin with family. In the selections you will hear from the Analects, Master Confucius and his disciples affirm filial piety. This entails reverence for one's ancestors that was officially sanctioned by the Shang dynasty, as we saw previously. When one's parents are alive, staying close to home is required by Confucius. Unlike his contemporary Siddhartha Buddha, who separated from his family in order to obtain enlightenment, Confucius never encourages such a radical detachment. Rather, Confucius teaches his followers to remain embedded and loyal to their family, village, and nation. For Confucius, personal identity is not defined by separation from community, but rather defined by it, by the network of relationships that tie us together. So I will read an excerpt from Book 1, Chapter 6, from the Analects. The master said, "A youth when at home should be filial, and abroad respectful to his elders. He should be earnest and truthful. He should overflow in love to all, and cultivate the friendship of the good. When he has time and opportunity, after the performance of these things, he should employ them in polite studies." Chapter 7. If a man withdraws his mind from the love of beauty, and applies it as sincerely to the love of the virtuous, if in serving his parents he can exert his utmost strength, if in serving his prince he can devote his life, if in his intercourse with his friends his words are sincere, although men say that he is not learned, I will certainly say that he has. Chapter 9. The philosopher Tang said, "Let there be a careful attention to perform the funeral rites to parents, and let them be followed when long gone with the ceremonies of sacrifice. Then the virtue of the people will resume its proper excellence." This is from Book 2, Chapter 5. Mang asked what filial piety was. Master said, "It is not being disobedient." Soon after, Fan was driving him. The master told him, saying, "Mang's son asked me what filial piety was, and I answered him, not being disobedient." Fan said, "What do you mean?" The master replied, that parents when alive be served according to propriety, that when dead they should be buried according to propriety, and that they should be sacrificed according to propriety. Book 4, and this is from Chapter 19. The master said, "While his parents are alive, the son may not go abroad to a distance." End of quote. We move to the next category, scholarship. Repeatedly, Confucius exalts the role of the scholar, grave in his manners, who prefers study over wealth and luxury. During the Han Dynasty, 206 BC to 220 AD, a civil service exam centering on Confucian texts were mandated. The Confucian civil service exam was required in China all the way into the 1900s during China's last imperial dynasty, the Qing Dynasty, which ended in 1912. Book 1, Chapter 8. The master said, "If the scholar be not grave, he will not call forth any veneration, and his learning will not be solid." This is from Book 4, Chapter 9. The master said, "A scholar whose mind is set on truth, and who is ashamed of bad clothes and bad food, is not fit to be discoursed with." This is from Book 13, Chapter 28. Cui Lu asked, saying, "What qualities must a man possess to entitle him to be called a scholar?" The master said, "He must be thus, earnest, urgent, and bland. Among his friends, earnest and urgent; among his brethren, bland." Book 14, Chapter 3. The master said, "The scholar who cherishes the love of comfort is not fit to be deemed a scholar." Book 19, Chapter 1. The scholar trained for public duty, seeing threatening danger, is prepared to sacrifice his life. When the opportunity of gain is presented to him, he thinks of righteousness. In sacrificing, his thoughts are reverential. In mourning, his thoughts are about the grief which he should feel. Such a man commands our approbation indeed. Conformity. Unlike the Taoists, Confucius does not emphasize spontaneity and individual creative expression. Instead, he stresses conformity to societal norms and to one's role in the social hierarchy. Accepting one's place in society, thought Confucius, is key to ensuring social stability. Public shame for having dishonored one's place in society, defined by the individual, family, and other set of relationships, also helps bring about virtuous behavior and societal stability. According to the scholar Grant Hardy, due to Confucianism, China is a land of polite, face-saving excuses. This politeness and desire to keep up good social appearances, even if it means not directly omitting error, is, thinks Hardy, traceable to, and I quote, Confucius and his ideas of ritual, deference, and hierarchy, end of quote. From Book 1, Chapter 2 of Confucius. The philosopher Yu said, "There are few who, being filial and fraternal, are fond of offending against their superiors. There have been none who, not liking to offend against their superiors, have been fond of stirring up confusion. The superior man bends his attention to what is radical." Chapter 3. The master said, "If the people be led by laws, and uniformity sought to be given them by punishments, they will try to avoid the punishment, but have no sense of shame. If they be led by virtue, and uniformity sought to be given them by the rules of propriety, they will have the sense of shame, and moreover will become good." Chapter 8. The master said, "If the scholar be not grave, he will not call forth any veneration, and his learning will not be solid. Hold faithfulness and sincerity as first principles. Have no friends not equal to yourself." Book 2, Chapter 19. The Duke Ai asked, saying, "What should be done in order to secure the submission of the people?" Confucius replied, "Advance the upright and set aside the crooked, then the people will submit. Advance the crooked and set aside the upright, then the people will not submit." Book 12, Chapter 9. The Duke Qing of Qi asked Confucius about government. Confucius replied, "There is government when the prince is prince and the minister is minister, when the father is father and the son is son." End of quote. Action and civic duty. Once again, unlike Taoism, Confucius does not bring to the fore inaction, passivity, and non-intervention. In contrast, he desires his followers to see civic action as an important duty they are to fulfill. This public service is to be performed virtuously. Resorting to deception and Machiavellian-like manipulation in order to retain political office and order in society is contrary to Confucian thought. Book 1, Chapter 10. Confucius was asked, "When our master comes to any country, he does not fail to learn about its government. Does he ask his information, or is it given to him?" Sui Kung said, "Our master is benign, upright, courteous, temperate, and complacent, and thus he gets his information. The master's mode of asking information, is it not different from that of other men?" Book 2, Chapter 1. The master said, "He who exercised governments by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place, and all the stars turn toward it." Book 13, Chapter 1. Cui Lu asked about government. The master said, "Go before the people with your example, and be laborious in their affairs." God bless.